Okay, good morning. Today is Tuesday, the 19th day of Menachem, and we continue the letter 5, the long letter that we've been studying for the last week. Tomorrow we're going to be concluding it. And Bezrat Hashem, tonight we're going to have a very interesting Torah class talking about the mitzvah, the very common, famous mitzvah of mezuzah, giving some insights of what a mezuzah is, things that you knew, things that you didn't know. So join us 8 o'clock tonight. Now, in this letter, as you remember, the Alter Rebbe began by asking, what does it mean to make God's name? King David made a name. The Zohar explains what does it mean he made a name. He made God's name. Anyone who acts charitable, he's making God's name. And he went on to a whole explanation about the creations of the worlds, this world and the spiritual worlds. The spiritual worlds were created with the letter Yud, and this world is created with the letter Hey. So the Alter Rebbe now moves on to explain that in the beginning of the creation, when God created this world, after explaining everything, all the concept with the letters, with the multitude of letters that are created, many multitudes of creations, Alter Rebbe here says now, the idea, the very fact that to create this world, Hashem needed to contract his essence, his light, into the smallest level, to the point that we should be able to receive. And the Alter Rebbe uses an analogy that even by human beings, anyone who is an intellectual, if you are an intellectual and you take some time, you sit down to yourself, you want to meditate, you want to think about something deep, and then you need to bring it down, a very deep concept, very deep thought. You have to bring it down into a very small sentence or a very small letter. It is a tremendous concentration that you need of filtering and lowering down to yourself. When you're thinking a very deep thought, somebody comes to disturb you, it's a big it's something that it's a big disruption. You don't want to be disturbed when you're in the middle of thinking something deep. And here says, when we're talking about Hashem creating this world, it says he created this world with a Hey, with a letter Hey. He concentrated the entire creation into the letter Hey. And we explained that the letter Hey is different than any other letter. The letter Hey is the breath. When you breathe, the breath that comes out, this is the letter Hey. He calls it Asaklili, a light letter. And that is the root and source of the entire world. Everything comes from this letter Hey. And as we explained yesterday, that there is the words, letters have in it the body and the soul. The soul of the letters is the message that comes through the words, the deeper understanding. This is the angels, the neshamas, they're able to see deeper godliness. And then there is the body of the letters. The body of the letters is the actual language that you hear, the words that you hear. that is rooted in the letter Hey. The letter Hey created the body of the letters, because every letter needs that breath in order to be uttered. So then the Alter Rebbe goes on to explain that this is the ultimate kindness that Hashem showed, the kindness that He had in order to create the world. Hashem is chafetz chesed, desires kindness. The ultimate kindness is the nature, if we can use the term nature, the nature of giving, teva tov lehetiv, the nature of doing good, the nature of giving. That is how the world was created, because there was the nature of doing good and giving. And Alter Rebbe is going to go on to explain, which we'll focus tomorrow, is that the beginning, it begins explaining today, but it continues tomorrow, that the beginning of the creation, it was the desire of giving without anyone deserving, because there was no anyone. There was nothing there to be deserving. But Hashem created the world with a giving, and then He created this system that we should deserve what we get. It should be Beisarusa de la Sata, Isarusa de la Ela. By the arousal from below, we draw upon us arousal from above. So let's see inside what Alter Rebbe says. Vehine, ba'adam atachtain, lemashal, mishu chacham gadol lahaskel niflois chachma. Now, with terrestrial men, for example, when one who is so great a sage has to comprehend the wonders of wisdom, talk about someone really, really smart, but he needs to reduce his wisdom, the concept. He contracts his conception and thought into a single letter of his speech. This is a stupendous contraction and a great descent for his wondrous wisdom. To contract your wisdom into a single letter is a great descent. Precisely as in this analogy, but infinitely more so. There was an immensely great and mighty contraction. For Hashem to create this world, it was a tremendous contraction. When during the 6 days of creation, the heavens were made by the words of God. During the 6 days of creation. As we said yesterday, the words of Hashem, how with 22 letters, those 22 letters are a source and a root and there is millions and millions of combinations that can come from the 22 letters, endless combinations. And this is all rooted in the words of Hashem. There's the 22, and there is the transformation, the transposition, and complete. There are many different ways to manipulate those 22 letters. We explained it in length in earlier lessons. So this is the word of Hashem, Shemayim Nasu. But beruach piv kol tzevam, and all of their hosts by the breath of his mouth. What does it mean? Talking about Shemayim, the heavenly creations were created with the words. And this, as we said before, it was created with the soul of the words. But then Beruach Piv, with the breath of his mouth, all the hosts. What is the breath of his mouth? That's what we said before, the letter Hey. The letter Hey was the source of the physical part. The letter Hey was the source of the body of the letters. Because to utter any of the letters begins with the letter Hey. He always klila sheshem avaya. He always Hey sheshem avaya bochu asa klila. And this is by the letter Hey, a light letter of the four-letter name of God. And says the Alter Rebbe, this is, interestingly, we find it the way the Torah says. It says, Eile toldos hashamayim ve'ha'oretz be'iboram. These are the chronicles of heaven and earth when they were created. So the word, when they were created, Kamesha Kasav, as it says, Behi Baram, when they were created. That word, Behi Baram, you can break it off and say Behei Baram. As it says here, Behei, with the letter Hey, Baram, he created them. That Hashem created the chronicles of heaven and earth with the letter Hey. And that letter Hey, he mekoyer ates ma'amoros shenimshechu mimayma rishon bereishis dename maimeru. Now this letter A is the source of the 9 creative utterances which issued from the first utterance, Bereishis, in the beginning, which itself is a creative utterance. What is he saying? We know it says that Ba'asara Mamoris Nivra Ilam, the world was created with 10 utterances. The 10 utterances are listed in the beginning of Genesis. Vayomer Elokim Ye'ir, Hashem said, let it be light, and so on and so forth. However, when we count the utterances, we find only 9. And our sages explain that Bereishis, the first utterance, is the very first verse in the Torah, Bereishis bara Elokim. In the beginning, God created. So it's not only that this is the first utterance, but this is also the source and the root of the other 9 utterances. And as it comes to when we use these 10 utterances, explaining how they represent the 10 attributes. So what is the first attribute? First attribute is Chachma. Chachma is the wisdom. Chachma is the spark. The very beginning of receiving something from above. That is the first. So Bereishis is the first utterance. He b'chinas Chachma nikras Reishis, and this is identical with the Sephira of Chachma, which is called Reishis. Right? The attribute of Chachma, of wisdom, is called Reishis. It's called the beginning. As in the phrase Reishis Chachma, the beginning of wisdom. Now says the Alter Rebbe, what we said earlier. Now, this was the way it happened in the beginning. In the beginning of creation, Hashem created it with giving. There was no creature up down to work to deserve that what Hashem gives. It was an only giving from above. That's what Alter Rebbe says. Ach az, oisa hamshocha v'yirida zu bli sarusa de lesata klal. However, at that time, at the beginning of creation, this downward flow from Chachma to Malchus occurred without any arousal from below whatsoever. And as the Torah says, Ki Adam Ayin Laved Chulu, as it is written, there was no man to work and to bring about the arousal. So Hashem gave it with his kindness. Ki Raki Chofetz Chesedu. It occurred solely because he desired to act with kindness. Ve'olam chesed yibana, and is also written, the world is built by kindness. Now, what is kindness? Kindness is the attribute of giving, just giving. And now says Alter Rebbe, what is interesting, that same word that we just explained, behibaram, these are the chronicles of heaven and earth when they were created, behibaram. And we said that this is behibaram, he created them with the letter Hey. Comes the Alter Rebbe says also there's something else to learn here. When you look at this word, behibaram, it makes the same letters, it's the same letters of Be'avraham, with Avraham. Why? Because Avraham is the ultimate kindness. Avraham Avinu, our father Abraham. As we'll explain in a minute, just let's read it inside and then we'll explain. And this is the meaning of another interpretation of the verse, that these are the chronicles of heaven and earth, Behibaram, meaning when they were created. By transposing the Hebrew letters of this word, the sages read this word as if it was simultaneously pronounced Be'avraham, meaning through the attribute that characterizes Avraham. Ki chesed la'Avraham chulu, since kindness is to Avraham, since Abraham embodied the attributes of chesed, the verse thus intimates that heaven and earth were created through the attribute of chesed. So we know this story. One of the examples of we see Avraham's kindness. Avraham was always had an open house. People came to him and he fed people right there, smack middle of the desert, middle of the Negev, hot desert, no man's land, and there was no water and no food, nothing, and he was there feeding the bypassers. And then what happened? When Hashem told him to circumcise, so God wanted to give him some time to rest and to heal, and so Hashem made it a very, very hot day, so no one should come. There should be no travelers. On a hot day, people stay home in the desert. They don't travel. So Abraham is sitting in a tent in front of his tent and he's waiting for guests to come. But when there are no guests, there are no travelers, so there's no one to do kindness to. So you would say, okay, thank you. I have a day off. I don't need to help people. Nobody is in need. If there's no one in need, then I don't need to serve. I can go and relax, but not Avraham. Avraham was the epitome of kindness. He was the embodiment of the level of kindness, and to the point that it says that the level of kindness, the attributes of kindness, spoke to Hashem and said, since Avram came to this world, I'm jobless, I have nothing to do. So Avram was the attribute of kindness embodied in a person, in the human being of Avraham. And that is why when he saw there was no one to give, he didn't go and relax. He couldn't. because he needs to give. He needs to give. That is the attributes of kindness. And that is why Hashem sent the angels in the form of human beings, and Abraham was acting kind to them. So the world, says the Alter Rebbe, was created behi baram be'Avraham with the level, with the attributes of ultimate kindness to give to us, because there was no man to deserve it. However, once the world was created with the chesed, Hashem set the system that it should be in a way that we should deserve what we get. Whatever we do would be affecting what is happening above. So we are creating our own reality. Like it says, the Mezritch Magid one says, it says, Hashem tzilcha. Hashem is your shadow. Whatever you do, there is a shadow that is acting from above. You make whatever you act, there is corresponding action that comes from above. This is the story of one of the Talmidim of Mezritch Magid. His name was Reb Zusha of Anipali. And he was a poor man. He lived in the city of Anipali. And in that town, there lived another Jew who came to daven, and he sees this poor person, and he decided he's going to give him some tzedakah to help him a little. So he put some money into his talis bag. And guess what? That day he had a very, very successful day in his work. So he was thinking about it, and he says, wow, I gave tzedakah, and I had a successful day. So he decided next morning also, he was going to give that person, Reb Zusha, is going to, and he made it a habit that from time to time, he would put in money to Reb Zusha, and his business started growing, and he became very wealthy. And then one day he comes to shul, and he wants to give tzedakah to Reb Zusha, and he's not there. And he asked around, where is he? And they told him that he went to his Rebbe. And he's thinking to himself, really? This holy man, he has a Rebbe? So that means his Rebbe must be even holier. So he asked, who is his Rebbe? They told him the Magid of Mezritch, Rabbi Dov Ber from Mezritch. So he decided that's it. He went to Mezritch. And from that day on, he started giving, instead of Reb Zusha, he started giving to the tzaddik, the Rebbe of Reb Zusha. But guess what happened? He started losing business. And until he lost everything. And then he came to the tzaddik, Rab Dov Ber, and he told him, I don't understand. I was giving tzedakah, I was giving to your student, and when I gave tzedakah, I saw blessing. But then when I heard that you're his Rebbe, I decided to give to a holier person. I wanted to give you. And now I lost everything. So the Maggid told this Yid, they told him, listen, I'll explain to you what happened. When you decided to give tzedakah to this Reb Zusha, whatever you did has an effect above. Your action has a reaction. You gave charity, and that Hashem gives you. But then, when you started making calculations and saying, I'm not going to give to this man, I'm going to give to someone who deserves it more, then that also caused the reaction. That from above, from heaven, they also decided to check whether you deserve it or not, whether there is somebody else that deserves it more than you. So this is the meaning of whatever Once Hashem created the world, it is now up to us. And when we do the acts of tzedakah, we are acting godly. And that we shall continue B'ezrat Hashem tomorrow. So thank you for joining. And any questions we can take now.